Commander Elias Ward stood inside the long corridor of the royal vessel, feeling the soft hum of the engines beneath his boots. He had been part of the Galactic Peace Guard for only 3 years, yet everyone who worked with him said he carried himself like someone who had spent decades in service. His calm eyes, steady movements, and respectful nature made him different from most young officers. Humans had only recently joined the wide galactic community, but their determination and loyalty had already made them noticeable. This time, Elias had been assigned a task he did not fully understand at first. He was to escort a group of diplomats to the crystal moons of Resera, a shining world ruled by one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. Humans rarely received invitations to royal gatherings, but the Empress of Resera wanted representatives from every race. Elias thought he would only be background security, unnoticed and unimportant. But that changed the moment he learned who would be traveling with them. Among the diplomats was Princess Lyriel of Resera, known for her calm voice and gentle leadership. She was the youngest daughter of the Empress, and her presence meant the journey must be kept absolutely safe. Many alien guards surrounded her, all trained since childhood to protect her. Elias expected he would not be needed at all. He believed he would simply stand quietly in the back and follow orders. At first, the trip was peaceful. The stars moved slowly beyond the windows, and the royal vessel glowed softly as it drifted through quiet space. Crew members walked calmly across the halls, discussing schedules and preparations for the diplomatic meeting. Princess Lyriel spent most of her time in the observation deck, reading reports or practicing her speeches. She rarely spoke to anyone, except her advisors. And Elias assumed she would never notice him, but humans had a habit of sensing when something was not right. On the 3rd day of the journey, Elias woke up early for his routine exercise. As he passed the main engine room, he felt an odd vibration. It was almost silent, but it was different from the usual rhythm of the engines. He paused, placing a hand on the wall. The vibration was not dangerous yet, but it felt unbalanced, like something was changing deep inside the ship. He reported this strange feeling to the engineering team, but they assured him everything was fine. They said the readings showed no problem at all. Elias did not argue. He respected their expertise. Still, he kept his mind alert. Later that afternoon, while Princess Lyriel walked toward the dining hall with her guards, the lights flickered. Only for a second, but it was enough to make every guard reach for their communication devices. Elias stepped closer, not wanting to panic anyone, but also not ignoring what he felt. Another flicker came, stronger this time. Then the ship shook lightly. Crew members looked around, unsure of what was happening. The pilot's voice came through the speakers, tense but controlled, saying there had been a sudden system malfunction. Elias did not wait for instructions. He moved toward the control room immediately, pushing through the hallway with long, steady strides. Inside the control room, pilots struggled to keep the ship steady. A strange gravitational field had appeared ahead. A bright, swirling wave of energy stretched across their path like a shimmering curtain. It looked beautiful, but everyone knew that beauty in space often hid danger. The alien guards panicked, trying to understand the readings. The gravitational wave pulled the ship forward, dragging it closer with each passing second. If they entered the unstable energy, the vessel would be damaged beyond repair. Elias quickly stepped forward and leaned over the main console. He did not fully understand every alien symbol, but the Peace Guard had trained him to recognize emergency codes. His fingers moved fast but steady as he redirected the ship's power toward the side boosters. The pilots stared at him, surprised. "Human, what are you doing?" One of them asked. "Helping," Elias replied calmly. "Boost energy output here and here. If we push against the pull, we might break free." One of the senior pilots hesitated, then followed Elias's instructions. When the backup boosters activated, the ship trembled again. The floor vibrated under everyone's feet. Panels flickered. A few lights shut off completely. Elias stayed focused. He guided the pilots step by step, moving power from secondary systems, activating manual controls, and adjusting shields so they would not melt under the pressure of the gravitational force. His voice stayed steady, even when everyone else sounded stressed. Finally, the ship began to slow its movement toward the wave. It did not break free immediately, but it resisted the pull. Everyone felt the pressure loosen slightly.
Just a little.
But it was enough for hope. Another tremor shook the vessel violently. Princess Lyriel, who had rushed to the control room in concern, stumbled as the floor tilted. The crack that ran across one of the panels widened, creating a small opening beneath her feet. She slipped, her foot sliding dangerously close to the gap. Elias turned instantly. He reached out, grabbed her arm firmly but gently, and pulled her toward him. The princess gasped softly, surprised by the sudden rescue, but she regained her balance with his help. She looked up into his steady eyes, realizing he had reacted in less than a heartbeat. He did not speak. He simply nodded to reassure her, then turned back to assist the pilots again. With one final push of power, the ship finally drifted out of the gravitational wave's reach. The lights stabilized. The engines returned to normal, though one of them sounded slightly strained. Crew members let out long sighs of relief. The pilots thanked Elias for his quick thinking, but the princess did not speak immediately. She watched him quietly, trying to understand how someone so young and from a newly known species could show such bravery without hesitation. When they reached Resera later that evening, the palace staff rushed to welcome the travelers. The royal guards escorted the princess to the main hall, but she kept glancing back at Elias. She had never seen a human before this journey, and she had certainly never seen someone risk so much so calmly. The Empress summoned the crew for a report. When Elias entered the grand hall, he stood with respectful silence. The Empress listened as her daughter explained what had happened. She described how the human had guided the pilots, saved the ship, pulled her away from danger. The Empress approached Elias with slow, graceful steps. She studied him with eyes that glowed softly like blue fire. He stood still, unsure if he was supposed to bow or simply wait. Finally, he decided to bow slightly out of respect. "You saved my daughter," the Empress said, her voice calm but full of depth. "Our laws honor such courage. A royal life carries great weight, and saving one creates a bond that cannot be forgotten." Elias looked up gently. "I only did what anyone should do." Princess Lyriel stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Not anyone would have acted as you did. You thought clearly when others panicked. You moved before I could fall. You risked everything without being asked." The court grew silent. No alien princess had spoken with such honest admiration toward a human before. Many nobles exchanged surprised glances. Lyriel continued, her eyes warm. "I can never repay what you did, but I will try from this day onward." Elias stood quietly, unsure how to respond. He had not helped her for reward. He had done it because it was the right thing, but he felt the sincerity in her words, and he felt respect in return. Something unspoken formed between them, the beginning of a bond built not by duty, but by trust, and that moment, though simple, marked the start of a connection that would change both their worlds in ways neither of them yet understood. The days following their arrival at the Crystal Palace of Resera passed quietly on the surface, but inside the royal halls, something new was happening. Word spread quickly that a human warrior had saved Princess Lyriel during the journey. Many nobles had never seen a human before and did not know what to think of Elias Ward. Some admired his courage. Others doubted the story, and a few felt uncomfortable that someone from a young species had shown such remarkable strength. Elias himself tried to keep away from attention. He returned to simple duties, checking guard routes, studying the palace layout, and keeping his posture respectful whenever a royal advisor walked by. He believed his part in the princess's rescue was only a small moment of luck. He had no idea that the princess thought differently. Princess Lyriel found herself thinking about the human far more often than she expected. Every time she remembered how he had grabbed her arm firmly but gently, pulling her away from danger, she felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had been surrounded by trained guards her whole life, yet none had reacted with such instinct, clarity, and selflessness. Humans had short lifespans compared to her species, yet this human carried the calmness of someone far older. One morning, she noticed him standing alone in the palace courtyard. He was adjusting a piece of equipment on one of the security drones. His movements were smooth, focused, and he handled the device with a kind of careful respect. She approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. "You were working early," she said softly. Elias turned, surprised to see the princess walking without her guards. He bowed politely. "I wanted to check some devices before the day begins. It helps keep things running smoothly." "You do this every morning?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "It is good to prepare before trouble arrives." She smiled gently. "Most guards only work when ordered. You work even when no one watches." He did not know what to say, so he simply nodded and continued adjusting the drone. The princess stayed beside him, watching with interest. She had never seen a human up close before their journey. His calmness intrigued her. His quiet nature made her feel strangely at ease. As the days continued, Princess Lyriel made it a habit to observe Elias from a distance. She watched how he treated everyone equally, whether they were nobles, servants, or even small cleaning drones. He lifted heavy objects for workers without being asked, explained safety procedures patiently to new guards, and fixed broken equipment even though it was not his job. His natural kindness surprised many. Elias did not act proud or seek praise. He simply helped because he believed it was right. This quality fascinated the princess. Most nobles acted only when something benefited them. Elias acted without expectation. One afternoon, she invited him to walk with her through the garden of crystal leaves. The garden was one of the most beautiful places on Risera. Each leaf shone softly, catching sunlight in shifting colors. Floating lanterns drifted between the branches, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of glowing blossoms. Elias followed the princess respectfully, keeping a comfortable distance but close enough to respond if needed. She looked at him with a thoughtful expression. "Tell me about your home," she said. "I want to understand humans better." Elias felt a little nervous. No royal had ever asked him about Earth before. He spoke simply, describing the blue oceans, green forests, and wide open fields. He told her about children playing outside during warm summers, people sharing food with neighbors, and communities helping each other during storms. She listened closely, absorbing every word. "It sounds peaceful," she said softly. "It can be," Elias replied. "But it can also be difficult. Humans do not always agree, but we try to make things better." Princess Lyriel admired that answer. It showed honesty, not pride. She found herself wanting to know more about him, more about humans, more about why he acted with such selfless courage. Over the next week, the Empress observed the growing understanding between her daughter and the human warrior. At first, she simply watched, trying to decide if their connection was harmless or dangerous. She soon realized that Elias was not like the nobles who sought power or the advisors who spoke with hidden intentions. He was steady, sincere, and respectful. She saw no harm in allowing him near her daughter, but not everyone agreed. Members of the royal council began whispering among themselves. They believed allowing a human to have influence in the palace was risky. Some feared humans, some disliked them, and some simply wanted to preserve the old traditions. The council had always controlled security matters, and the idea that a human had earned more trust than many seasoned warriors unsettled them. Deeply, Princess Lyriel sensed this change. She noticed the cold glances, the stiff greetings, and the sudden questioning of Elias's decisions. She worried that the council wanted to remove him quietly, without giving him a fair chance. One evening, unable to ignore her concern, she went to the security station where Elias was reviewing patrol routes. Only a dim lamp lit the room. Elias looked up as she entered, surprised but respectful. "Your Highness," he greeted. She closed the door behind her gently. "They want you gone," she said softly. "Some members of the council believe your presence will disturb the balance of the palace. They think you are becoming too close to me." Elias listened calmly. He did not show fear or anger. He had faced mistrust before. Many species did not fully understand humans yet. "I will leave if the Empress asks me to," he said quietly. "I do not want to create trouble here." Her brows lowered, and she stepped closer. "That is not the point. You saved my life. You keep this palace safer than anyone. You act with more loyalty than many who were born here. Why should you be sent away? Because some change takes time, Elias replied. People need to understand humans before they can trust us. I do not blame them for being careful. She looked at him, admiring how calm he remained even while facing uncertainty. His humility made her frustration grow stronger. You are not a danger, she said. You are the reason I feel safe. Elias blinked softly. He was not expecting such honest words. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Something gentle but deep passed between them, an understanding that went beyond duty or gratitude. It was the quiet beginning of trust and something more. Princess Lyriel made a decision that night. The next morning, the grand hall filled with nobles, advisors, and guards. The council gathered to discuss future security assignments. The Empress took her seat on the raised platform. Elias stood near the back, unsure why he had been called. Suddenly, the princess stepped forward. Her voice was steady, clear, and stronger than anyone expected. I request that Commander Elias Ward remain in the palace under my personal authority, she declared. A wave of shocked whispers washed through the hall. No royal had ever made such a request for a human, she continued, undisturbed by the reaction. He saved my life when our vessel was in danger. He guided our pilots when others panicked. He has shown loyalty without reward and protected this palace with dedication. His presence is essential, and I trust him completely. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Some tried to speak, but the Empress raised her hand, silencing the room. Her eyes rested on her daughter, then on Elias. She could see the truth behind her daughter's words. She had seen Elias's actions herself. She knew the palace had become safer since his arrival. After a long moment, the Empress nodded. Your request is accepted. Elias felt the breath leave his chest in relief. He bowed deeply, grateful for the trust. Princess Lyriel looked at him for a moment with a warm expression, one that carried respect and something softer hidden beneath it. From that day onward, Elias was officially placed under the princess's command. His duty was no longer simply guarding the palace, but ensuring her safety personally. While he took the position seriously, he did not realize how much more the princess felt. For her, his presence had become something steady, something reassuring, something she did not want to lose. But the trouble brewing within the palace was far from over. Some nobles still wanted to challenge the change. They feared the power of trust that grew between the princess and the human warrior. And as their bond deepened, unseen forces began preparing for the moment when they could test the loyalty of both. The atmosphere inside the Crystal Palace of Resera slowly shifted as the days passed. What began as quiet uncertainty had grown into whispers of doubt, and what began as admiration for Elias's courage had turned into complicated discussions behind closed doors. Although the Empress supported Princess Lyriel's decision to keep Elias as her personal guardian, many council members felt uneasy about the change. Their uneasiness created small tensions across the palace. Tensions Elias noticed, but never reacted to. Elias continued his duties with calm dedication. He checked the gates every morning, inspected the patrol schedules, and taught the younger guards how to remain alert in uncertain situations. He moved with simple discipline, never raising his voice or questioning royal orders. The palace workers had grown to respect him, even admire him quietly. Still, Elias knew something important was building in the background, something he could not yet understand. Princess Lyriel noticed it too. She felt the pressure whenever she entered the council chamber or passed through a hallway filled with advisors. Their polite smiles hid their discomfort, but she refused to allow fear or tradition to control her decisions. Every time she saw Elias carrying out his duties calm, steady, loyal, her belief in him strengthened. One evening, as she walked through the glowing corridors of the palace, she found Elias outside the royal balcony. He stood with his hands behind his back, looking out at the two crystal moons shining softly over the city. His expression was calm, but his silence felt deeper than usual. "You are thoughtful tonight," she said gently, stepping beside him. Elias turned slightly and bowed. "There's been news from the outer districts. A group is demanding access to the royal archives. They sent a message to the council." She frowned. "Did they say what they want?" "No," he replied. but they speak as if they have a right to everything inside the archives. They believe the Empire hides something. Lyriel knew this was a serious issue. The archives held sensitive information maps, old treaties, ancient records, secrets from ages long before humans even entered space. If anyone accessed them wrongly, it could create trouble across the galaxy. Will the Council agree to their demand? She asked. Elias shook his head. Not likely. But they are worried that refusing might cause unrest. I believe they fear more than they are showing. Lyriel looked at him, studying his calm posture. Do you think this group is dangerous? Perhaps, Elias said softly. They seem organized, and they know how to create pressure. That alone makes them someone we should watch. The princess sighed softly, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Then she glanced at Elias again. Thank you, she whispered. For what? He asked gently. For always thinking clearly. For being honest. For standing beside me, even when the council does not. Elias looked away for a moment, almost shy. It is my duty to protect you. But it is also your choice, she replied. And I see the difference. Their eyes met briefly, and there was something warm, something unspoken. Something stronger than the bond created on the ship. Elias felt it, even though he did not know how to describe it. Lyriel felt it too, though she knew she had no right to expect anything more than his loyalty. The next morning, the palace prepared for a council meeting to discuss the threat. Lyriel entered the hall confidently, knowing her mother, the Empress, would be present. The Empress sat at the center with her calm authority. Watching everything with eyes full of silent wisdom, Elias stood near the side wall, close enough to protect the princess if needed, but far enough to remain respectful. His presence alone made some council members shift in discomfort. The council leader stepped forward. Your Majesty, the group calling themselves the Open Sphere has repeated their demand. They insist the royal archives be open to all species. The Empress remained still. And if we refuse, they say it will lead to consequences, the leader replied. We do not know what they mean. Lyriel spoke before anyone else could. We cannot give in to threats. If we open our archives because of pressure, more groups will demand the same. Some council members nodded. Others looked uncertain. Another advisor spoke sharply. We should not allow a human to advise us through the princess. Elias stayed silent, though the words were meant to push him aside. The Empress, however, narrowed her eyes slightly. Commander Elias has shown more clear thinking than many trained advisors, she said calmly. He does not speak without reason. The advisor stepped back, embarrassed. Lyriel felt gratitude fill her heart at her mother's words. As the discussion continued, the Empress decided to strengthen palace security. She assigned additional guards, updated patrol routes, and gave Elias the responsibility of reviewing every security measure around the princess's wing. Some doubted the decision, but no one dared argue directly with the Empress. Elias accepted the responsibility with calm respect, though the task was far heavier than any he had carried before. During the following days, he worked from dawn until late evening. He inspected every doorway, checked every scanner, and trained the guards to respond to unknown signals. His dedication impressed everyone, except those who simply did not want to accept a human in their palace. One afternoon, Princess Lyriel entered the training yard where Elias was showing young guards how to handle emergency communication systems. He turned when he sensed her presence. You should rest, she told him gently. You have worked without stopping. Elias wiped a small trace of dust from his uniform. I will rest once everything is safe. You always say that, she whispered with a little smile. He looked at her with quiet honesty. I cannot relax when there is a chance you might be harmed. Something warm spread in her chest at those words, but she did not let it show too clearly. Instead, she replied softly, Then let me help. Over the next few days, Lyriel stayed closer to Elias than before, not because she feared danger, but because she wanted to understand how he worked. She watched him analyze threats, communicate with guards, and suggest improvements. She saw every detail of his dedication, and she realized that he was not simply protecting her, he was protecting an idea. A belief that every life was worth saving, One evening, when the palace lights dimmed and the soft glow of the crystal moons filled the halls, the Empress asked Elias to meet her privately. He entered the room with respectful posture, unsure of what she would say. The Empress studied him for a long moment. "You have shown loyalty, strength, and balance," she said. "I have watched how my daughter looks at you and how you guard her without hesitation." Elias kept his eyes lowered. "She is my responsibility." "She is more than that," the Empress replied softly. "She trusts you. She depends on you. And that is not something earned easily." He was unsure how to respond. The Empress stepped closer. "Commander, you did not come into this palace seeking reward or influence, yet you have gained something more valuable: respect. Even those who doubted you see your sincerity now." Elias felt humbled. "I only want to serve with honor." "You already do," the Empress said. "And that is why I ask you to stay. Not just as a guard, but as someone who will stand beside my daughter as she grows into her future." Elias felt his breath catch. He understood the deeper meaning in her words, though she spoke gently. Before he could respond, the princess entered the room. She looked between her mother and the human warrior with a questioning expression. The Empress smiled softly. "My daughter, you have chosen well whom to trust, and I support your decision completely." Lyriel looked at Elias, her eyes bright with relief and something deeper. "I told you," she whispered. "You do not have to worry anymore." Elias met her gaze and felt something shift inside him. Not a duty, not an order, but a quiet understanding that his place was here not just because he saved her life, but because something meaningful had formed between them. Princess Lyriel stepped closer. "I meant it when I said I can never repay you," she said softly. "But I want to spend my life trying." The room grew silent. The Empress watched them with calm acceptance. And Elias understood that his future, once uncertain and empty of purpose, now rested in this palace. Beside the princess he had saved and the empire he had come to respect, he bowed gently. But this time not out of duty, out of deep sincerity. "I will stay," he said quietly. "As long as you need me." Princess Lyriel smiled, her eyes warm with trust. And so the human warrior remained in the heart of the alien empire, not as an outsider. Not as a simple guard, but as a symbol of courage, loyalty, and the bond formed between two lives that destiny had brought together. Humanity has once been unseen in the galaxy, but with Elias Ward standing beside alien royalty, the galaxy could no longer ignore them.